One. Hi, everyone. It's Leah just being Leah. It's
Hi,
great to
Leah.
be here. Thank you so much. And to everybody as well who's joined us. I see Dr. Samir's name. It says for me, Leah Charles King. I hope it doesn't say that on his screen. But yeah, welcome to my world. This is just, just seems to be the way it is for me. It's great to be here for Advanced Choice Documents. My name's Leah Charles King. And I am here today to talk about something actually that I find very intriguing, very important. And actually, I was honored to be asked to host the launch of the Advanced Choice Documents at King's College Hospital a couple of months ago. And that kind of opened a can of worms for me. You know, when you go into a discussion thinking one thing and then you start having a discussion with others and it brings up all different kinds of ideas. It was really interesting. And it's great today to have all of you here and to be back with a fantastic panel of guests. So before I go into the guests, for those of you who have joined us and wondering what is an advanced choice document, I've heard a bit about it. I'm a bit curious. How does it all work? I'll explain. So basically, an advanced choice document, they're written when somebody is well, and they're set out how, or you set out how you would like to be treated during a future mental health crisis or a relapse. Their introduction was recommended in 2018 in the independent review of the Mental Health Act and by Parliamentary Committee on the draft of the Mental Health Bill in 2023, which we're still waiting on, as many of us know. Research has shown they can reduce detentions under the Mental Health Act and improve relationships with mental health professionals. Not only that, but Black people are disproportionately likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act, and there is a lack of trust in general within the mental health services in the community. So wider adoption of advanced choice documents has the potential to really help address some of these issues. So I guess for someone like myself who has been in the system, who banged on many doors telling my GPs and doctors and anybody who'd listen that I've got bipolar symptoms, I believe I have bipolar, these antidepressants you're giving me, they're not working. I'm actually what I believe is manic, because I saw somebody on a soap opera. She's acting like this. She's got bipolar. So I recognize that more than I recognize depression. And I was shunned out of the room time and time again until it induced full mania. And I became very, very unwell. After that, like many of you could probably sort of recognize or identify with, is that you then get in the system of different doctors, different psychiatrists, different types of care, different people talking at you rather than with you. And it's a very confusing space. So therefore, if when I was going through that, if I had an advanced choice document, could that have helped me get better sooner? And I guess for me, that is one of the key questions. And if I had one, or if I do one now, just for future proofing, who's going to listen to it? Who is it worth the paper it's written on? So this is the type of stuff that basically I want to talk with you guys about. So I brought together a bunch of fantastic people. You'll see there, Sally Marlow. How you doing, Sally? You all right? See you again. Now, Sally's a professor of practice. Hello. She's the professor of practice in public understanding of mental health research at King's College London. And that's where I met Sally. And she was on the panel talking about this, in a room full of very eager people hoping to learn more. Sally's also a BBC radio broadcaster. She specialises in documentaries on mental health and mental illness. And alongside our director of research as well, I say our, that's Bipolar UK's director of research, Tanya Gergel. She has co-founded the website advancedchoice.org, which is where you can find loads of information, everything related to do with the ACDs, i.e. advanced choice documents. So you may hear us say advanced choice documents or ACDs for short. So if you hear that, just know that maybe we're using those interchangeably to just make it easier. So that's Sally. It's great to have you, Sally. And then with Sally there, you can see Dr. Samir Jauhar. Hey, Dr. Samir, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank
Nice
you,
to
Leah.
see you again. Really good to see you. He's a consultant psychiatrist and a clinical academic at South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust and senior clinical lecturer at King's College London. Samir mainly looks after the care of young people with first episode psychosis, including bipolar. And then we have Polly Wiseman. Hiya, Polly. How you doing?
Hi, good, thanks.
Good to see you in the flesh properly. I know we sort of glanced eyes in the crowd at the ACD's event, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you got in touch with me afterwards, which was great. Polly is a writer and performer and the artistic director of Fire Raisers Theatre Company. They were diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 19. Over 2 decades ago, as well as raising money for Bipolar UK. Thank you so much. Polly is using art and activism to raise awareness of bipolar, challenge stigma around psychosis, and campaign for better mental health care. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Adam Deacon, who I personally campaigned to become an ambassador of Bipolar UK for many years. And in fact, I got him during COVID on Clubhouse. Do you remember that, Adam?
I do, yeah, I do.
I put you on the spot. I put you on the spot.
I'm glad
in front
you
of
did.
Hundreds of people. I'm so glad I did. You know, it proves sometimes to be bold, because I believe your representation within, you know, the fellow ambassadors here at Bipolar UK is really, really important. And I've sort of been watching from a distance, you know, slowly getting involved and finding your feet and doing more and more for Bipolar UK. So thank you for that. And
thank you.
I hope we can do more together. So for those of you who don't know, Adam is a BAFTA award-winning actor. I remember the night you won that BAFTA. And he's a writer, he's a director, producer, musician from Hackney in East London. Adam is committed to raising awareness around mental health and breaking the stigma surrounding bipolar. And he has been an ambassador for Bipolar UK since 2020. So it's great to have all of you here. I'm really, really pleased. Let's get stuck in. So first of all, I'm going to speak to you, Sally, because you're the one that's kind of with Dr. Tanya Gergel, who, you know, I respect dearly. The two of you have come together to relaunch this, but advanced choice documents, they're not new, are they? You and Dr. Tanya, you didn't create these, did you? Were they already out there?
No, they're already out there. And actually, if you think about it, they make a lot of sense before you even start thinking about getting any clinicians or researchers or anybody else involved. I mean, there are, as you said, Leah, there are a really simple way where you can make it known what you want to happen should you become unwell. And, you know, you might write that down, you might have it on your phone, you might do it with a healthcare professional if you've got a regular one, or if you've got one that you feel you've got a particular rapport with. You might do it with a social worker, you might do it with a family member. There's lots of different ways you can do it. There's no one way to do an advanced choice document. The key is in the name. It's about writing down in advance, before you get unwell, your choices, advanced choice, based on what you know about your own illness and being expert in your own illness, what your illness is like, what you respond to, what you don't respond to. And we use the word document, but it doesn't have to be a written document. It can be. You can write it in, you know, you can write it in biro, you can write it on a computer, but you can also make it known on your phone. You can capture it on your phone in words or in voice notes. There's lots, we call it a document, but there's lots of different ways to be a document. And the key thing is that we're not saying that it's going to work all the time. We're not going to say that it's going to bring everybody to some land of milk and honey, but it is a way that you can have more say in your treatment. And what we wanted to do with the website, advancedchoice.org, was make sure that this wasn't just coming from top down, from clinicians, from the Department of Health and Social Care, from the NHS, from the trusts and the hospitals and the clinics. We wanted to say to people, actually, this is your document. So if you want to think about laying out what your illness looks like and how you would like it to be treated, here are some tips about how you can go about doing that. And then crucially, speak to your other point, Leah, that you mentioned, and we talked a lot about this, didn't we, in the launch, to make sure it's seen. So so we set the web, we got some money, we set up the website, we put some videos to show people what things to think about in an advanced choice document, how to record their choices in advance, and then how to make sure they've got the best possible odds of those being listened to if and when they get unwell again. And that's what the website does, basically. A few videos, a few templates, and that's it. It's a kind of how-to manual, really.
I think it's great what yourself and Dr. Tanya's done, because you've brought this all together. You've created a new, fresh website and you've relaunched it. But I guess my question would be, well, if it was already out there, why was it not working? Like, why has it been ignored? Why hasn't it had much uptake? Why did it take you and Dr. Tanya to come in and do something about it?
Well, I think there was a crunch point, which was the independent review of the Mental Health Act, which you mentioned, when that review looked at lots of things which would make mental health treatment better. And one of the things it looked at was autonomy and people not feeling like they had enough say over their own treatment. So that review was really the first time that in the UK that it was brought to the fore, if you like, not only that this is a good thing, but that it works, right? That there'd been research, mainly in other countries at that stage, to show it worked. And then Tanya did, and others, but Tanya is one of the leaders in this, did research in the UK to say, okay, does it work in our healthcare systems?
Right.
So yeah, they've been around for a long time, but I guess the spotlight hasn't been on them. And now we've got the evidence that they work in the UK, particularly, as you mentioned, for minoritized racial groups. We've got evidence that they work in terms of keeping people out of hospital. They reduce sections. We've got evidence that they intervene at an early point before things get to crisis, and that's particularly important in discussions around suicide prevention. So we've got evidence that these things work. So the next question is, how do you get them into services? And there's two ways you can do that. You can either get clinicians to do it, or you can have a grassroots support. But I would argue it shouldn't be either or, you do both and. So in South London and Maudsley, and hopefully Samir's going to talk a little bit about this, more and more they're starting to implement, that's the word that they use, implement advanced choice documents so that people as part of services get to make them. But not everybody is doing that. We all know services are stretched. We all know that people move from service to service. We all know that some people have got bad experiences with some services, and so the idea that people can work on their own and that make that their own, and then make sure as best they can, either themselves or with a mental health advocate or with their clinician or a family member, to make sure that documentation, whatever it looks like, reaches the care team in the event that somebody's unwell. So it's working at it from both sides, understanding it's not perfect. But I think one of the things we said at the launch, didn't we? We said, you know what, it's got to start somewhere. If we just wait for services to have the resources and to prioritize it, it ain't going to happen. If we wait for politicians, it ain't going to happen. Something at grassroots level can at least start making it happen for some people as the bigger systems kind of slot into place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I guess we're going to get onto the mechanics and the hows and the whats. Let's jump on to with Dr. Samir and just ask you, as a clinical psychiatrist, as well as all the other hats you wear, what do you think of ACDs, genuinely, and would you recommend them?
Good question. I would be very silly if I wasn't to recommend them, because it's something I would want if I was to become unwell. I think what we learn with young people is if you tell them what to do, they'll do the opposite. And they're usually better at managing things themselves than we are as clinicians. The NHS is not paternalistic anymore, thankfully. And during the pandemic, especially when we're looking after young people with bipolar disorder, they managed their care very well most of the time. They were able to make decisions about side effects, which treatments they find helpful and which they don't. And I think it's a bigger picture, isn't it? It's letting people have autonomy, like you said at the beginning, giving them autonomy for their own treatment. And therefore, we have to support that as clinicians. So to answer your question properly, of course, it should be happening. And I guess the important thing is the implementation, and especially for young people, because, you know, we don't tell them, they tell you what they want. We don't tell them which iPhone to pick or other phones are available or whatever else. And with their treatments, even if they make mistakes, which we all do, that's fine. You just need to see them through. So I think as an ethos, it's something that we have to be really offering to people. But as Sally said there, it's something that's good for them to come and say, right, doc, you know, I want this. And therefore it's bi-directional. So it has to be something we implement in someone's care, but it's the bigger issue of letting people manage their own care, giving them the autonomy to do so, and then seeing them through. So you see someone through. When we see young people with psychosis, it takes a bit of time. It takes that first year, 18 months for them to get their head around things. And this is just part of that. So I think it's just part of good care. So you'd like to think it's an add-on. The hope would be, you know, when we do our checks for blood pressure, pulse, diabetes control, bloods, and the rest of it every 6 months, this is probably something we should be tagging on to that.
Right.
And then it gets done as part of your general, you know, general MOT as opposed to an extra.
I guess in terms of my GP, they started doing regular, like I say regular, I think it's every 6 months, mental health reviews with me, which I do. But I would imagine, and I can hear that they've got their set of questions and they're very much sticking to it every time. They're not really diverting out of that. And I guess they have their reasons for it. I have very mixed reviews about these reviews, to be honest. But that's a whole nother conversation, you know. The thing is, I wonder if I had this document and if it was in their system, would they be willing to even review that with me every 6 months as part of this overall review? So I guess that's just something in my head. But I want to bring Adam and, of course, Polly into the conversation. I mean, Adam, your mental break, you know, that's what I call mine, was quite well documented, right? Yeah. So you went through it and it was difficult because the two of us are in the public eye. So certain things happen. There's just so much we can hide it, right? And you went through a really, really tough time. You were hospitalized, is that correct?
I was, yeah,
unfortunately, and you went through it, and you're here now, which is incredible. You're doing amazing things, and congratulations on the recent movie.
Thank you.
I'm still waiting on my invite to the premiere, which I missed. But
apologies, I wasn't dealing with it myself. It wasn't down to me.
I know I'm winding you up completely. But the thing is, you know, all jokes aside, if you had an ACD whilst you were in the hospital, or even afterwards. Do you think it would have helped you in that situation?
Do you know what, Leah? I have mixed feelings, really, because I feel like it's great that something is being done to give people more choice. I think in principle, it's a great idea. It's just through my own experience, everything was so chaotic and so, I mean, chaotic is the word I'd use. It didn't seem like there'd be a moment for anyone to be reaching out to me saying, well, this is something you've written in the past and we will stick to this. And because it felt like I didn't have much choice. I remember being sectioned and they were saying to me on the first night I was there that, you know, you're going to have to take these pills. And that was a lot in itself to get my head around. And I was like, no, I don't want to take these pills. I'm not happy taking any medication. And they simply said that if you don't, we will have to inject you. And it was that feeling of, okay, you're not in control. So I feel like for many different reasons, I'm quite skeptical, because I feel like when I'm well, I've been well for up to 4 years now. I've been in a really good place. And I think for me personally, I don't like to think too much about when I get ill. I know it's something that could always happen. I know we have to be prepared for this, but I don't like to think about it too much. So when I'm in a good place, I like to really focus on that and not think about it. And I think also it would really annoy me if I've written this list down of things that I feel like could help and no one listens, because my experience again is that the staff are always changing. I've been hospitalized twice and I never saw the same staff. It was totally, so you build up a rapport with the staff, you get to know them, and then they don't work there anymore. And I feel like mental health, and especially bipolar, it's in such a bad place when it comes to funding and how long you have to wait for appointments. I feel like there's so much more that should probably be done before we get into things like this, if that makes sense. But I think in principle, I think it's a great thing. And I think it's always good to have more choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know, I absolutely can identify where you're coming from in a lot of what you said there, because you do feel, well, for me, certainly going through everything I went through, who was listening to me? Nobody was listening, even from the start. When I said, I don't have depression, I've got bipolar, it was shutting me down.
It
So
does
therefore,
feel like
so when it was full-blown mania and I'm screaming out for help, I'm being ignored because everyone knows better than me, because I'm the mad one, quote unquote. Do you know what I mean? And it's not almost, it is very disrespectful, because the minute you're unwell, everyone treats you like you're stupid, you know, and that can make everything even more frustrating, because, okay, our behaviors, get it, we're unwell, but we're still a person inside, and there's still something going on there, which, whether it's scared, whether it's, we still know what's going on, even if we're having this other moment, right? We still know, we still have our inner voice somewhere going. And when you said words like chaotic and things like that, it does feel chaotic, and it feels actually like nobody's in control.
Well,
to be
Leah,
honest,
as well, my situation involved the police as well when I was sectioned. So at one point, they were the ones that were bringing me into the hospital, and from what I remember, it was like armed police, and it was so I can't imagine them ever taking the time out to listen to me in that way, because as far as they're concerned, I've been causing trouble and I've been doing things online and causing mayhem because I didn't know I had bipolar. And I feel like you said, it didn't feel like there's a lot of choice there. It felt like as I got better when I was in hospital, we had regular meetings and we'd have get-togethers where all the people using the services would talk about what could be improved on the ward, you know, and they did listen. I'm not going to say they didn't listen. I remember someone asking we should have a vending machine in there so we can buy snacks when, you know, because we're not allowed out, and they actually got a vending machine. And so it's not like they weren't listening, and I think they were very good at, there was a lot of communication about medication. I remember that. Not so much on the early stage, because I feel like I was totally out of it. But as I got better, there was a lot of dialogue about what medication worked and what didn't work. And so I feel like it's getting better. I just don't know how this would work in the real world.
In a real
basically.
life setting, exactly. I want to ask Polly as well, because welcome to the combo, Polly. I know you had quite strong feelings, didn't you? You were at the launch and you sent me a little DM and we agreed as well. You know, I felt like you were quite conflicted. You tell me what your thoughts are towards advanced choice documents.
Well, I mean, I think on one level, they sound absolutely great, because I had about the worst experience I could have done when I was first diagnosed. And like Leah said, I was given antidepressants, ended up manic and psychotic, sectioned. The whole hospital experience was horrible. I was forcibly injected. It was very unsafe for reasons I'm not going to go into, because it would need trigger warnings. But it's left me with a lot of trauma. So then on one level, it would be really good to have an advanced choice document to say, please never let this happen again, and this is why. And then on another level, I fear looking back over all that stuff. And like Adam says, I always go back and forth on whether I actually got bipolar and whether these things happened. So it might be quite, good on one level, because then you've got a list of things that have happened in the past, and you take control of it. So even just to possess that document, I think could be quite empowering.
Yeah.
But then it is what happens if you try and give it to someone, because I do still think mental health services, and not everyone, I know, Dr. Samir, I'm not including you. I still
feel free to include me. That's fine.
No, you don't seem like you are, but there's still quite a patriarchal, patronizing air to quite a lot of mental health professionals, and I do still feel quite infantilized, even though I'm in my 40s. So yeah, I love the idea of advanced choice documents. I'm probably going to write one, but I suspect it might be more for me than being
than them.
Yeah,
Whoever they
but
are.
all you
Yeah.
can do is keep pushing, keep fighting for better.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true. I mean, as Dr. Sally and Dr. Samir both said, you know, it's better to do something than not at all. You know, the three of us, myself, Polly, and Adam, are the ones sat here with lived experience. We have bipolar, right? So I guess we all feel pretty similar. I think we think in theory it's a great idea, but we're all sort of a bit skeptical because we're in the system, whatever the system may be. And we know that the system doesn't always work for us, just generally. And then we know we have that added layer as, you know, black and brown people, as Adam and I are, that, you know, if the police are coming, they're not, I know the laws have changed around that now, but they're not coming to hold your hand and guide you nicely to the hospital. It's pretty violent, and it's pretty and it's horrible. It's horrible. You know, for many people from other races who go, God, never witnessed anything like that. I could tell you what Adam would have gone through would have been horrendous, because it wouldn't have been gentle. Okay. So you're already going through a mental break, a mental crisis, and then you've got police at your door, armed police or whatever type of police, it doesn't matter, you know, to take you away. And then you feel completely helpless. And then you're like, okay, he's saying, but I've got this document, guys. I've got this document. It's on my phone. It's in the drawer. And that, really?
I think they would just
Samir,
laugh.
Sally,
Honestly.
tell me who.
I
Yeah,
think,
who
I think
would
they,
listen
I
to
think they
him?
would think I'm winding them up, and it would make the
Right.
situation worse. I honestly do think that. But can I say as well, when I was looking at some of the advanced choice document videos, and I thought, in principle, like for instance, I've got a dog, and I had a breakdown in 2020. Police came to my doors again, and I thought I lost my dog because I thought the dog ran off, and I didn't know that a family member managed to get the dog and it was safe. So I remember the first night being in hospital, I was so worried about if I've lost my dog. But if there was a situation where someone could take care of my dog and make sure that he's looked after and make sure my dog goes to a family member, that would be amazing, because then it would have taken away all that stress. But I totally agree with you, Leah, that if when it's happening and you're going through it, I just can't see how that would work in that situation, especially like you said, when police are involved and it's a very hectic situation. Yeah.
And Dr. Samir, what was you going to say? You want to pop in, and then we'll go to
Sorry,
Dr. Sally.
Thank you. No, that's perceptive of you, and it's great to have people who've been in that position just being open and honest about it. I guess there's an analogy, because when we think in medicine, you think, what mental health obviously has to be looked at the same as physical health. So when people have birth plans and they go into hospital saying, this is my birth plan, do they get treated differently to someone in your position, is the question I would ask.
I can come in straight away, and I think Adam will back me up on that. Yes, they would be treated differently. They'd be treated with respect. And whether they chose to go with the birth plan will say, I'm in labor, forget the birth plan, just give me the drugs, you know, whatever it is. They would be at least spoken to in a respectful manner. Would you say that you were spoken to in a respectful manner, Adam? Whether it was during, you know, being arrested, or whether it was even in hospital in the beginning?
Not at the start, not in 2014 when I was sectioned. It was scary. It was really scary. It was quite traumatic when I look back at how it was for the first few weeks. And it wasn't until I managed to get my surroundings, my bearings around me, work out where I was, maybe the medication was working, then there was more conversations with the staff. I could be more vocal about how I was feeling. But it just felt like quite a scary place, which I don't feel like there would have been any moment to say, look, there's this document on my phone, I expect this and that, I'd like this kind of food. It just didn't seem like that at all. And I just feel like you'd be looked upon as maybe a bit of a nuisance if you were to do that, and were to come out with these kind of things, because it felt like the staff were really overworked. They were stressed out themselves. Sometimes they didn't know how to handle everything that was happening on the ward. So that's why I know I always say it, and we hear about it all the time, but I feel like we need to have a whole different concept to the way we deal with the early stages of bipolar, and more funding. I know I say it all the time, but more staff, more funding, and more continuity to the service that you get given as well.
Care.
Yeah, definitely.
Dr. Sally, do you want to jump in there? And then Paul will go to you.
I think, Adam, thank you for having, I really heard you loud and clear when you said you don't like to revisit this stuff, and thank you for doing that to illustrate what you think some of the problems might be. I think I absolutely agree with you on this doing stuff before, but an advanced choice document can help you do that. So an advanced choice document doesn't have to just kick in at the point at which somebody calls the police or you end up in hospital. An advanced choice document can say, if A, B, and C are happening, actually, I'm on my way somewhere that I don't want to go. And if D, E, and F happen while A, B, and C are happening, that might mean that I don't go to the place that I don't want to go. And that's what the researchers found, that when people have got advanced choice documents and they've written down how their illness starts and what the signs are, and they've shared that with people around them, not just care teams, that sections are reduced. So it's not just at the point of crisis. That is the whole point. I saw somebody had put in the chat, isn't the point of an ACD when you are stable? I mean, certainly stable, what a ridiculous word, but the language is just so inadequate for all of this, isn't it? But the idea that when you're well, that you can articulate all aspects of your illness. And the thing about that you were saying about new staff, the idea is that if you've got an advanced choice document, if you're with staff who don't know you, they've got something that they can refer to. Having said that, I completely understand all the reservations and the skepticism about it. I absolutely understand that, because services are not always run in the best way. Some are brilliant, but some. So I think that the point as well that you made, Leah, about the minute you're unwell, everybody speaks to you as though you're stupid. The idea of your advanced choice document is that's you, that's your voice. When you were well, when you were, if not listened to, at least more listened to. And there it is. Now, the problem we've got at the moment is we're right at the beginning of getting these things established. And when Samir talked about birth plans, that's a really interesting one. So I had my first child 26 years ago. And I trotted along with my birth plan, and the matron just took it off me and said, well, you won't need that. And that's 26 years ago. Well, now, if you go into hospital with a birth plan, in fact, it's what, do you have a birth plan? You're asked, right? But 26 years ago, I was, optimistically clutching my little bit of paper thinking, this is what I want. And absolutely no chance. I never saw the birth plan.
So then what do you think changed in those 26 years? Somewhere along the line, were the midwives trained that they have to now listen to women with the birth plan?
I think it's a combination. So I think it's a combination of more midwives got trained. And that's what, hopefully, when finally these Mental Health Act reforms come in, And there are some guidelines written, that more mental health professionals will be trained not only to ask for advanced choice documents, but to offer those as part of treatment, working on advanced choice documents with people, so that even when it happens again, that advanced choice document is in place and on a system. So I think that midwives were trained in the same way that now healthcare professionals are going to be trained, but also people were agitating. Women were saying, this isn't good enough. You can't just take me in, treat me like a piece of meat, deliver a baby, and then send me home again. And the whole point of the advancedchoice.org website is so that people who want to say, hang on, here is my voice, this is what I want, that grassroots agitation for this will be in place as well. But I absolutely understand everything that people are saying about experiences of services. It's and this is not a quick fix. But like anything good, it needs to build some sort of momentum if it's gonna get somewhere. And all the principles, as everyone said, are absolutely spot on. There's nothing wrong with the principles. It's that fear of them not being listened to.
Yeah. Paul, did you want to jump in there to anything that you heard?
I think there's huge power in grassroots activism if enough of us demand that we're taken seriously. And I think mental health is lagging behind physical health in that way, because I think the whole birth plan thing is now widely accepted, where ACD still most people haven't heard of. So there's a lot of community members talking to each other and also talking to the powers that be and going, we really need and want this and deserve this. And let us do it. And I mean, part of the reason I'm making a show is it's more like a talk come show, is to spark conversations and to try and link up people who have bipolar, the people who love them, the mental health professionals, researchers, just so there aren't as many barriers where it's a them and us. So anything that can be done, I think, to facilitate open dialogue and hear people with experiences, point of views, I think that really helps people to feel safe and to feel like they have some kind of ownership over what happens to them.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I think it's so interesting so far. I know we got loads of questions in the chat, and I'm going to get to those questions in a moment. I do just want to ask, though, and throw it out to everyone on the panel, whoever wants to jump in first. So what happens if we create these ACDs when we're well, as suggested, and then the time comes and we no longer agree with what we've written on them? What happens then? Adam, what do you reckon?
It's a concern, because I changed my mind a lot. And so I guess that would be quite frustrating if I've kind of changed my mind in how I want to be treated and I feel a different way once I'm there. But I know I keep saying it, but I feel like we've got to get the basics right. Like, it's so hard to get an appointment with your GP to even discuss your mental health. So to get a change of medication. But I don't want to sound like a negative person. I think it's a great idea. And I feel like anything that gives people choice and a voice is an amazing thing. But it'd be nice to get checked up on more regularly. It's hard to get an appointment. It really is when you're going through something, and if you can't get an appointment, then do you know what I mean? What's happening there? So I feel like it would be, going back to your point, it would be quite frustrating if you change your mind, I think, as well. I
guess it'd be frustrating for both parties, right? Because they would be saying, but hold on, Adam, Leah, Paul, you wrote this when you were well. You said blah 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 blah.
Can I just jump in with, so this is what's known as a you can make what's known as a self-binding directive. Very, very unfortunate choice of words to call something binding, but it basically, the idea is in your advanced choice document, you can say, when I'm unwell, I know that this treatment works, but I also know that I'm going to tell you that under no circumstances do I want it. So you can put that in your advanced choice document, and you can say, so please give it to me because it is the only thing that works. You can put that in your advanced choice document. Now then, in the moment of your illness, does that help? Maybe not. Does it help 2-3 weeks down the line when you're starting to move towards recovery and you think, yeah, they did that to me, but I gave them permission to do that because I know it works. So that was my wish, even though at the time, for whatever reason, I said not. Now, these things are a huge philosophical conundrum, right? You know, because who's to say who is well and who is ill and da-da-da. But the point about the advanced choice document is you can use it to explore these things and to kind of work it out, work it out what your feelings about it are, and what you want and what you don't want.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I feel really, really mixed about it. I really I'm all for it, by the way. I want to make that clear. I think, as we've all agreed here, having that choice is better than not having the choice, right? But I'm still there, a bit of a cynic, because I'm just thinking, okay, I could write it, I could change my mind, or the people I've written it for, so to speak, won't listen to it, which I think is probably more of a concern. I think with me, I even write notes to myself now, just in case in future I may ever need them and just stumble across them. And just things like, you know, Leah, right now you're writing this and you're well. And by the way, ... You know, and it's just like little reminders to myself that actually, if you are unwell and reading this, remember you were writing this when you were well, for example. Remember you've been doing that thing. So I guess I'm writing little documents to myself along the way. But sort of bringing it all together is maybe a different story. And again, something else Adam touched on as well. When you've gone through all that darkness and pain, and you come out on the other side, even just to want to reconnect with it is not really something you want to do. You do want to sort of bury it. When this time last year for World Bipolar Day, when I wrote that sort of ebook for everyone on the 25 steps of living well with bipolar, just doing that over a course of a month actually really triggered me. And after that, I fell into a bit of a depression for a couple of months. And it just never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that having to revisit those places would have brought me down. I guess that was the naivety in me at that point. So when I go to do it again, because it is a when, I will have to write stuff, whether it's for my own sake, whether it's an ACD. I'm just more aware now for future, you know, just to be a bit more chill with myself. Paul, did you want to say something before I go to some questions? Did anyone want to jump in with anything? I thought I saw you waving. Okay, no problem. Let's go to the crowd. Hey, everyone there. So Steve has said, any suggestions on how you can use an ACD to help someone entering mania to get an early intervention before the individual gets too high and potentially ends up in hospital? So Steve is saying 2 challenges that they've historically experienced is, one, their family and friends couldn't get access to mental health services quickly enough, which many of us have experienced. And 2, someone entering mania might not recognize it and therefore be open to receiving an early intervention. So any ideas on this? And Steve has said they've thought about recording a video of themselves to advise themselves when they are well, to play to themselves if they enter mania in future, which I actually don't think is a bad idea. But what do you guys think of what Steve has said there?
Yes, I found the opposite. I found some videos on my phone that I'd done when I was quite unwell, and actually finding them when I was well, because I completely didn't realize I'd made them, was quite a good and I posted stuff online, which looking back I'm going, yeah. But
you did paste it, so you saw it and you felt that it kind of empowered you because it reminded you how far you've come.
Yes, I guess. And I suppose from that, I could look I could look at that and go, all right, well, that clearly wasn't a good place to be in. And I didn't realize it then. So now that I can realize it, then that's something I need to write down. And I suppose also, just as you come out of episodes and things, is just to kind of note the steps that are helping bring you out of it, I guess. But obviously you wouldn't write the document until you're sort of stable.
Yes, exactly. Did anyone else want to say anything to what Steve said there? No, nothing to jump in. Okay, so Lorna said oh, sorry, go on, Dr. Smith, sorry.
No, I think it's a great idea with the video and relapse prevention. It touches on something else that came in that Adam brought up about continuity. You know, we see it ourselves. Psychiatry used to be that you'd have the same psychiatrist in the community that you'd have as an inpatient. And that discontinuity hurts us as well. So your people who know you really well, they should be on your side. So actually, the onus is on them to contact the inpatient psychiatrist to say, this is my person, this is what they want. And so I'm happy to facilitate that. And biologically, it makes sense, because if you're getting better on a treatment, it's wrong to have to chop and change that. So it's really adding to that continuity, but saying, maybe a way of doing it is sharing it with your longer term team, and then the onus is on them to make sure that continuity comes. Because I do it when people I look after get admitted, and I'll phone, email, harangue, and speak to colleagues and buy them coffee and all the rest of it, just to make sure that continuity is there.
But that's wonderful that you're doing that, but not saying that anything about other people, but that's just you going that extra mile and being kind. Not everyone is like that, or not everyone has time for that. So it kind of goes back to what Adam says, and further back to what he said when he said, well, just at the core of it alone, the lack of continuity of care. Because if you had diagnosed me and I've been with you over the last 12 years, then I guess if you'd heard that I was unwell, that I've got those ACDs, right? We've spoken about it many times. We've reviewed it many times. So then if I was in the unfortunate case, I'm in hospital, you can advocate for me there. And I would feel comfortable actually knowing that I trust Dr. Samir, because he's been my guy for all these years. You see what I mean? And but that's not necessarily the case. Now we're in hospitals, it's all strangers, there's no continuity of care. I could be saying, but Dr. Samir, he's the person that's been helping me. They're not even trying to call you. So
point taken.
I think it comes to that key of, if you were still, exactly what Adam said, if you were there from the start, and in the unfortunate event, how many years later or months or whatever, I'm back in hospital or in a situation that you would use, that would be the time where you'd be worth your weight in salt, wouldn't you? You'd be like, yep, she's got an advanced choice document. I know this works for Leah, that doesn't. I know her, and this is what's going to get her better. And I guess it makes us feel like we're starting from scratch every single time, because it's just new faces. And Adam, over to you. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say as well, because it makes such a difference. So obviously I was in hospital in 2014, and then I was back in hospital in 2020, and there was a few staff members that were still there, and just having the same staff members that were talking to me on a level, I do honestly believe it got me better a lot quicker. I was in there a few days this time in 2020, because it was a case of them reminding me how ill I was back in 2014, reminding me how I got out of it, reminding me of everything I've achieved since then. And it was just having them faces that I remember from the first time round. It helped so much. And if there was more of that, I feel like people would get better a lot quicker. I honestly do. Yeah, just going back to your points you made.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's just, honestly, we could talk about this forever. We've only got like 9 minutes left. Hannah is just saying, when you're unwell, they talk to you like you're stupid. She quoted me. She said, this is 100% my experience, Leah. My fear is also taking the time to do one of these ACDs in depth and it being ignored. My fear as well, Hannah, which would leave me more distrustful of the mental health professionals than I already am and do from previous horrible experiences. Exactly. And that's why I feel that kind of like, yeah, because I feel like if I go through all that, if I put myself mentally through that, revisit those points of trauma, write this document, do these videos, talk to myself, feel awkward. Who am I talking to? I know I'm a presenter and I do it for a living, but I mean, to talk to myself, that's a different story, you know? And then it comes down to it, all of that being ignored, and me going, but look, it's on my phone. I've got a Word document on my phone. I've got this video. Are they going to really sit and listen to it when I think about my experiences in the past and how every time I opened my mouth, I was just, nobody really wanted to listen to what I had to say. So I'm kind of with Hannah there. Oh, Joy is saying, what happens if the person's verbal wishes when unwell conflict with what is written on the ACD? I guess we kind of touched on that when we said, what if we change our mind, right? Dr. Sally, Dr. Samir, do you have a solution on that type of thing? So if it conflicts, then what do you do in those situations with that person?
I'll go to Sally first because she'll be more sensible than me.
Well, I was going to say go to Samir first because he's the clinician. So
I got in there.
Yeah, thank you. I can give you a very kind of dry answer to that and tell you what the research says, but Samir can tell you what that's like in practice. Hopefully that's not dropping you in it too much, Samir.
Not at all.
Basically, there isn't a way to solve this, and it couldn't be legally binding. So if you wrote in your advanced choice document, I want to have this medication because I know it works, and then when you're actually unwell, you say, don't bring that medication anywhere near me, I don't want it. And your care team say, but in your advanced choice document, you say this, and you also say that you will refuse it and that we should give it to you anyway. There's nothing legally binding about any of this one way or another. So there's nothing that says that the care team has to give you the medication because that's what you've written in your advanced choice document. And there's nothing to say that that you can override what was in the advanced choice document. So there's nothing to say which of the two is in that situation where there's a conflict. But we do know that for some people, not for everybody, having a self-binding element of an advanced choice document is very helpful. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tanya. I'm not telling you anything that she hasn't said.
Sorry, Sally, we're literally going to have to be wrapping up. So if you just, don't mind, just...
I'll keep it really... I'm not telling you anything she wouldn't tell you herself, and she said it many times on video, so I'm not breaking any confidences here. But Tanya says that in her advanced choice document, she says, the only thing that really works for me, for her, I'm not saying this for everybody, is ECT, and I won't want it, but please give it to me anyway. And that's what happens when she has treatment. And she says that's what gets her well again. It's a very extreme view of it, but yeah, okay, enough.
That's interesting. No, I could talk to you for another 2 hours. I'm afraid that this Zoom will cut us off at some point, and I want to be able to thank you guys, but also let some other voices be heard in the chat. So Patrick has said, when attempting to write an advanced choice document, they received no meaningful, insightful assistance from their care coordinator in writing it. The clinician's engagement was bereft of insight, let alone empathy. Those kind of things disturb me. And those are the kind of things that I've experienced a lot in my journey. So, I can't even say to Patrick, I think they were writing about their friend, I can't even say, oh, that's a one-off situation, I'm sorry to hear that, because I hear stuff like that all the time, right? So that would really hurt me. Something like that will bother me, and that will ruminate on my mind probably for weeks. It will get me really annoyed if I sat there with someone I thought was supposed to help me, and then they were just like real nonchalant and not bothered about it. That would bother me a lot. I guess you guys probably feel quite similar. Jill has said, a lot of these experiences resonate with me. I've decided to have a go at an ACD. Good one, Jill. But like Polly, I feel it won't be easy revisiting past trauma. I've decided to share this with my family and have asked them to advocate for me if I need them to. I think that is really important, isn't it? Getting your family and friends involved. Would you agree, Paul?
Yes, I think it's there are certain members of my family, like my parents, that I might not want to get involved because I think it would scare them because they don't know everything. I would probably get my husband involved and maybe a close friend, just because there's that it's not a distance, obviously, but it's people that would be less scared than my parents. I think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think as long as you've got someone that you trust, right? And Dan has said, I think Sally's ABC regarding early signs and corrective action is spot on. A great idea that has been fed back. What support will keep me feeling okay? You will know I am no longer struggling when signs that I am struggling at this point, signs that my mental health are poor. So I think maybe they're talking about what to write, you know, on that document and how to know. I just wanted to ask one last quick sort of question to round up, which was, who do we need to tell? If we do set up an advanced choice document, who do we need to tell? That's the important thing. Because we need to tell someone when we're well, don't we? So,
if you've got a care team a regular care team or a healthcare professional that you know and trust, tell them. Family members, friends can advocate for you. So people who work with you to help put your advanced choice document together, those are the people that you can tell. Now, if you're telling healthcare professionals, you can ask them, where will this go in my notes? So that then you can tell your friends and family that they can tell other healthcare professionals, they are in the notes, this is where you need to look for them.
Well, thank you all so much. I can't believe the hour's absolutely flown by. I guess we could probably have spoken about this for a bit longer. But thank you, Dr. Sally, Dr. Samir, Paul and Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you about ACDs.